Have you ever felt small in the face of a great challenge? As if you lacked the strength, ability, or courage to face something that seemed much bigger than you? Now, imagine being hidden, afraid, just trying to survive, when suddenly you hear a powerful voice saying, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." But what if, instead of feeling courageous, all you felt was doubt? That's exactly how Gideon's journey began. A simple farmer, no military experience, no status, nothing that made him stand out. In fact, he was someone who never imagined he could lead an army. And yet, God chose him to defeat an unbeatable enemy. But how was that possible? How did a man filled with insecurities turn his weakness into strength? And more importantly, what can Gideon's story teach you about your own battles? If you've ever doubted yourself, if you've ever felt like you weren't good enough for something, or if you've ever thought your dreams were too big for you, this story will change the way you see yourself. And before we continue, go ahead and like this video, because the lesson you're about to learn might just be the key to overcoming your greatest fears. Have you ever stopped to think that sometimes God has already given you the answer you're searching for, but you just can't see it yet? Gideon had no idea that he already had everything he needed inside him to fulfill the purpose God had given him. He thought he was too small, too weak, too incapable. But the truth is, what God saw in him was far greater than what he could see in himself. And here's something most people don't realize. What happened to Gideon might be happening to you right now. Have you ever felt like you weren't good enough? Like you didn't have the right tools, the right knowledge, or the right opportunities? Have you ever wondered why God didn't choose someone more qualified instead of you? If you have, then this video is for you, because Gideon's story holds a powerful key to overcoming insecurities and achieving your goals. By the end of this video, you'll discover a surprising detail about Gideon that very few people know, a detail that could completely change the way you see your struggles. So stay with me until the end, because you might be much closer to your victory than you think. The Midianites were a nightmare for Israel. Like a swarm of locusts, they would arrive without warning, destroy crops, steal livestock, and leave only ruins behind. The people of Israel, once strong, now lived hidden in caves, constantly afraid of the next attack. There was no hope, no resistance, only despair. And it is in this chaotic setting that we find Gideon. But he wasn't a warrior. He wasn't a leader. In fact, he was hiding, threshing wheat inside a winepress, a place meant for crushing grapes, not for processing grain. He was running, trying to survive, afraid that the enemy would come and take everything he had. To anyone looking from the outside, Gideon was just an ordinary man, a farmer with no significance. But to God, he was a warrior. Then, suddenly, something impossible happens. A celestial figure appears before him and says, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Judges 6 verse 12. Mighty warrior? Gideon couldn't believe what he was hearing. He looked around, maybe expecting that message to be for someone else. He didn't feel strong, he didn't feel ready, and he certainly didn't see himself as a warrior. And maybe you felt the same way. Have you ever felt like you weren't strong enough for something great? Have you ever looked at your own limitations and thought, "This isn't for me"? That's exactly what Gideon did. He questioned. He doubted. If the Lord is with us, then why is all this happening? He asked. He didn't see the promise. He only saw the suffering. But God isn't impressed by insecurity. He doesn't choose the most qualified. He qualifies the chosen. Even after receiving this divine calling, Gideon still couldn't believe it. So he asked for signs. First, he placed a fleece on the ground and said, "If this is really from you, let the fleece be wet and the ground dry." And God did it. But Gideon still doubted. Then he asked for the opposite. This time, let the fleece be dry and the ground wet. And again, God did it. Gideon needed confirmations, proof, guarantees. But God had already given him the only confirmation that truly mattered. "I am with you." And now, Gideon had to decide. Would he keep hiding, or would he trust that God was right about him? How many opportunities have you missed because of fear? How many dreams have you abandoned because you thought you weren't capable? Now, stop for a moment and think. What if the biggest turning point in your life is hidden in the very thing that scares you the most? Gideon stood before an impossible choice. He could continue hiding, living in the shadow of fear, accepting a life of insecurity and doubt. Or he could believe what God was saying about him. But let's be honest. What if you were in his place? If God appeared to you today and said, "I have chosen you for something great," how would you react? Would you accept that calling? Or would you try to argue with God, listing all the reasons why you aren't good enough? The truth is, at some point in life, we are all called to something bigger. But the difference between those who reach their goals and those who stay stuck isn't talent, strength, or ability. It's the decision to trust. So let me ask you, what would you do if you knew that God has already placed everything you need inside of you? Would you keep running? Or would you take the first step toward the purpose He has for your life? Tell me in the comments. Have you ever felt that God was calling you for something great, but fear paralyzed you? Let's talk about it. And if this video spoke to you, make sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share this message with someone who needs to hear it today. Gideon's transformation didn't happen overnight. He didn't wake up one morning as a great leader, full of courage and determination. He had to face his fears, one step at a time. And instead of making things easier, God did something that seemed impossible to accept. Gideon's army started with 32,000 men. And even then, it was a small number compared to the vast Midianite forces. But God looked at that army and said, "There are too many men." Too many? Gideon already felt outnumbered, and now God wanted to reduce his army even more. But there was a purpose behind this. God didn't want the victory to be credited to human strength, but to His power. So, He commanded Gideon to send home all those who were afraid. 22,000 men left. Now, only 10,000 remained. But God said, "It's still too many." Then, He gave Gideon a test. He led the men to a stream, and only those who drank water like warriors, alert and prepared, would be chosen. After the test, only 300 men were left. 300 against an unimaginable army. It made no sense. Gideon could have given up right there. He could have questioned God again, asked for more signs, or simply backed down. But he chose to trust. And that was the turning point. That night, Gideon and his 300 men surrounded the Midianite camp. But instead of attacking with swords and spears, they blew their trumpets, smashed clay jars, and lifted their torches high, shouting, "For the Lord and for Gideon." What happened next was a miracle. The Midianites panicked. In the darkness, confused by the noise and the sudden glow of torches, they turned against each other. The enemy army destroyed itself. That battle wasn't won by strength. It wasn't won by military strategy. It was won by faith and obedience. And here's the truth that can change your life. You don't have to wait until you're ready to act. If Gideon had waited until he felt strong, he would have never moved. If he had waited to have a large army, he would have never seen God move. Courage doesn't come before action. It comes in the middle of it. So let me ask you, what battle are you delaying because you think you're not ready? Gideon was called a mighty warrior before he ever acted like one. Before the battle, before he led, before he did anything to justify that title. But God already saw in him what he couldn't yet see in himself. Now, think about this. What if God has already given you a name that you don't believe yet? What if He has already placed inside of you everything you need to win, but the only thing stopping you is how you see yourself? The real question in Gideon's story isn't just about armies, strategies, or miracles. It's about identity. Who do you believe you are? Gideon saw himself as weak, as small, as someone without the ability to lead. But God saw a warrior. And when Gideon finally started to believe that, everything changed. And here's what can transform your life today. What's holding you back may not be a lack of resources, but a lack of vision about who you truly are. How many times have you prayed for answers, for direction, for strength, without realizing that God has already placed everything you need inside you? What if the answer you're looking for isn't out there, but within you, just waiting to be activated? Now, stop for a moment and imagine. How many battles could you have already won if you simply believed what God says about you? If this video spoke to you, just imagine how many more life-changing insights you can find here on this channel. Don't miss this journey. Gideon teaches us something that can completely change the way we see ourselves. Our limitations do not define our destiny. Our faith does. Maybe you've spent your whole life believing you're not enough, that you don't have the talent, that you don't have the right resources, that your life isn't moving in the right direction. But here's the truth. God sees a warrior where you only see weakness. When Gideon finally believed what God said about him, he became what he had been all along. What if you did the same? The greatest lesson in Gideon's story isn't about fighting external enemies. It's about fighting the lies you believe about yourself. Your biggest obstacle was never a lack of ability. It was your lack of belief in what God has already placed inside you. So now I ask you, what is God calling you to do that you still don't believe you're capable of? If this message spoke to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And don't leave this video without subscribing to the channel. Turn on notifications and be part of this journey of transformation. Because what God has started in you is only just beginning.